Morales family home sat at the end of Sycamore Street in a quiet suburb of Philadelphia, its white paint peeling and shutters hanging askew. From the outside, it looked like any other aging house in the neighborhood: 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a small front yard perpetually in need of mowing. But within those walls, Elena and Sofia Morales were learning lessons no children should ever be taught. "Daddy's coming home today," their mother Isabel announced, her voice tight with anticipation as she smoothed her dress for the 5th time that morning. At 42, Isabel Morales still maintained the beauty that had once caught Gabriel Morales' eye, though years of anxiety had etched permanent lines around her mouth. "Alina, make sure your sister looks presentable. You know how your father likes things to be perfect." Alina, 16, nodded silently. She glanced at 13-year-old Sofia, who was absently braiding and unbraiding her dark hair, a nervous habit she'd developed over the years. The sisters shared the same olive skin and dark eyes, Gabriel's eyes, as Isabel often reminded them. But while Elena had grown cautious and watchful, Sofia remained innocently hopeful that each of their father's returns might be different. "He's been gone for almost 6 months this time," Sofia whispered when their mother left the room. "Do you think he'll stay longer?" Elena didn't answer. She knew better than to make predictions about their father's behavior. Gabriel Morales worked as a long-haul trucker. At least that's what he told everyone. His absences stretched from weeks to months, and when he returned, the house transformed into a minefield of tensions and expectations. The sound of tires on gravel sent Isabel rushing to the window. "He's here," she hissed, frantically checking her reflection one last time. "Girls' positions." The sisters moved to their designated spots in the living room, a routine practice so many times it had become automatic. Sofia perched on the edge of the sofa, while Elena stood slightly behind her, hands clasped in front. They listened as the front door opened, followed by the heavy thud of their father's boots in the hallway. "Where are my girls?" Gabriel Morales' voice boomed through the house, deep and commanding. Isabel appeared first, her face transformed into a mask of adoration. "We've missed you so much, Gabriel," she murmured, reaching for his luggage. He let her take it, his attention already moving past her to where his daughters waited. Gabriel Morales stood 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and hands calloused from years of labor. At 48, his once jet-black hair was now streaked with silver, but his eyes remained sharp, missing nothing. He smiled as he entered the living room, arms outstretched. "There they are," he said, his gaze lingering on each girl. "My beautiful daughters. Come give your father a proper welcome." Sofia rushed forward first, eager for approval. Elena followed more slowly, her stomach tightening as it always did in his presence. Gabriel embraced them both, holding them a beat too long before releasing them. "You've grown, Sofia," he said, running his hand over her hair. "And Elena, more beautiful every time I see you, just like your mother when she was young." Behind them, Isabel beamed with pride, as if this was the highest compliment. "I've prepared all your favorites for dinner," she said, "and the girls have been practicing their piano pieces to play for you later." "Perfect," Gabriel replied, settling into his armchair, the one that remained untouched during his absences, preserved like a shrine. "Everything sounds perfect." As the evening wore on, Elena watched her father carefully. He seemed relaxed, generous with his affection and stories from the road. But experience had taught her that his mood could shift without warning, like storm clouds gathering on a clear day. Tonight would be the honeymoon phase, when he played the role of doting father and husband. Tomorrow might be different. Before bed, Gabriel called each daughter to his study for their special time, private conversations that Isabel had instituted years ago as a way for them to bond properly with their father. When Elena's turn came, she entered the wood-paneled room with measured steps. "Close the door, Elena," Gabriel said, his voice softer now. He patted the space beside him on the leather sofa. "Tell me everything I've missed. Your mother says you've been excelling in school." Elena sat at the far end of the sofa. "I got all A's this semester," she said, keeping her voice steady. "And I joined the debate team. That's my girl," he said, sliding closer. "Always the smart one. You know how proud that makes me, don't you?" Elena nodded, feeling the familiar dread building in her chest as his hand moved to rest on her knee. Outside the study, she knew her mother would be listening, making sure their bonding was going as planned. "We're going to have a wonderful few weeks together," Gabriel promised, his fingers tightening slightly on her knee. "One big happy family, just the way it should be." Elena fixed her eyes on the wall behind him, her face a carefully constructed mask of compliance. In her mind, she was already counting the days until he would leave again, offering temporary reprieve from the terrible lessons being taught in the house on Sycamore Street. The Morales household operated on a series of unspoken rules that shifted depending on Gabriel's mood. By the second day of his return, Elena had catalogued the current iterations. Breakfast had to be ready by 7 a.m. sharp, with the table set precisely. No one spoke unless spoken to during meals. Isabel was to report every detail of the girls' lives since his last visit, and most importantly, everyone pretended that their family was normal. Your father has worked so hard to provide for us, Isabel reminded the sisters as they washed dishes after breakfast. Gabriel had gone outside to inspect the property, critiquing the maintenance Isabel had neglected during his absence. He deserves our complete devotion. You understand that, don't you, girls? Sophia nodded eagerly while Elena focused on drying a plate, avoiding her mother's gaze. At 42, Isabel Morales lived in a carefully constructed reality where Gabriel was the perfect husband and father, despite all evidence to the contrary. She had met him when she was just 19, a naive immigrant from Mexico enchanted by the attention of an older American man. 23 years later, she remained desperate to preserve the fantasy of their family life. Elena, her mother's voice sharpened. I asked if you understand. Yes, Mom, Elena replied automatically. I understand. Isabel's eyes narrowed slightly. Your attitude worries me sometimes. Your father notices these things. He told me last night that he thinks you're becoming distant. Elena felt her throat tighten. I'm sorry. I'm just tired from studying for finals. Well, put on a happier face. He's been looking forward to spending time with his girls. Isabel's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Remember what I told you both. Men need to feel respected and admired in their own homes. It's our job to create that environment. From her earliest memories, Elena recalled these lessons from her mother. How to speak softly, how to anticipate Gabriel's needs, how to accept his affection without complaint. Isabel had coached her daughters on these behaviors with the dedication of a stage mother, preparing children for performance. Sophia, Isabel continued, turning to the younger girl. Your father mentioned taking you shopping today. He wants to buy you some new clothes. Sophia brightened. Really? Just me? Yes, just you this time, Isabel confirmed, a flash of something jealousy. Concern? Crossing her face before disappearing. Elena and I will prepare a special dinner while you're gone. As Sophia rushed upstairs to get ready, Elena felt a sick knot form in her stomach. The shopping trips had started with her when she was Sophia's age. The private dressing rooms. The outfits her father selected always a size too small. His insistence on being present as she tried them on. Mom, Elena said quietly once Sophia was out of earshot. I don't think Sophia should go alone. Isabel froze, her hands still in the soapy water. What exactly are you implying, Elena? You know what I'm saying, Elena replied, her voice barely audible. Her mother's face hardened. Your father loves you girls more than anything in this world. Everything he does is out of love. She pulled her hands from the water, drying them aggressively on her apron. I won't listen to these insinuations. They're disrespectful and ungrateful, but enough. Isabel hissed, gripping Elena's wrist. Do you want to ruin everything? Do you want him to leave us again? Is that what you want? The terror in her mother's eyes silenced Elena more effectively than her anger. Isabel's greatest fear had always been abandonment. She had built her entire identity around being Gabriel's wife, the mother of his children. The possibility of losing that seemed to frighten her more than anything that happened within the walls of their home. Elena lowered her gaze. No, Mom. Good. Isabel released her grip. Now finish the dishes and then help me prepare the marinade for dinner. Your father loves my enchiladas. Upstairs, they could hear Sophia singing as she got ready, innocent excitement in her voice. Elena felt tears burning behind her eyes but blinked them away. Crying was another violation of the unspoken rules. When Gabriel and Sophia returned hours later, Sophia's arms were laden with shopping bags, her face flushed with happiness. Look what Daddy bought me, she exclaimed, pulling out dresses, skirts, and tops all slightly too mature for a 13-year-old. Beautiful, Isabel murmured, examining each item with a tight smile. Gabriel, you're too generous. Gabriel placed his hand on Sophia's shoulder, fingers digging in slightly. Nothing's too good for my little girl. Why don't you go try on that blue dress again? Show your mother and sister how pretty you look in it. As Sophia bounded upstairs, Gabriel caught Elena watching him, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes burning with silent accusation. He held her gaze for a long moment, a subtle warning in his smile. Elena, he said, his voice deceptively gentle. You seem tense today. Is that thing bothering you? Isabel shot her daughter a panicked look from behind Gabriel's back. No, Dad, Elena replied, forcing her lips into the practiced smile that had become her armor. Everything's fine. Good, he said, never breaking eye contact. Because you know how important family harmony is to me. Nothing should disrupt that. Nothing. The threat hung in the air between them, unspoken but unmistakable. Another rule to follow: never challenge the facade, never expose the truth of what happened in the house on Sycamore Street. Elena kept her diary hidden inside a hollowed-out copy of Pride and Prejudice on her bookshelf. It wasn't much, a small leather-bound notebook filled with careful observations and coded entries that would mean little to anyone else. But to Elena it represented the only space where truth existed in the house on Sycamore Street. On the 10th day of Gabriel's visit, while her father napped and her mother prepared dinner, Elena slipped into her room and retrieved the diary. With the door closed and her desk chair propped against the doorknob, she wrote, Day 10. F took S shopping again yesterday. 3rd time this week. S came back with another necklace. M pretended to be happy. I heard crying from bathroom after. When will this end? Mrs. Caldwell asked about bruise on my arm during gym. Said I fell during soccer practice. Counting days. 18 until he leaves again if pattern holds. The coded references F for father, M for mother, S for Sophia had become second nature. Elena had begun keeping the diary when she was 14. After a particularly bad visit when Gabriel's temper had erupted over a dinner served 3 minutes late. The bruises had faded, but the memory remained vivid, Isabel apologizing profusely while Gabriel raged. Sophia hiding under the table and Elena standing frozen in the doorway, witnessing it all. A soft knock startled her. Elena quickly slid the diary back into its hiding place. Elena, can I come in? Sophia's voice came through the door. Elena removed the chair and opened the door. Sophia stood in the hallway wearing one of her new outfits, a sundress that revealed too much of her shoulders and chest for a 13-year-old. Do you think Daddy will like this one? Sophia asked, twirling once. Mom helped me pick it out for dinner. Elena fought to keep her expression neutral. You look pretty, Sophie, but maybe with a cardigan? It's kind of chilly tonight. Sophia's face fell slightly. Mom said I shouldn't cover it up, that Daddy likes to see the necklace he bought me. She touched the gold chain at her throat, a delicate pendant hanging from it. Another necklace? Elena asked carefully. Sophia nodded, her eyes brightening again. He says I deserve pretty things, that I'm his special girl. She lowered her voice. He told me not to tell you or Mom, but he's taking me to the cabin this weekend. Just me and him. For fishing. The cabin. A small property Gabriel owned in the Pocono Mountains. Supposedly for hunting trips with friends. Elena had been taken there once when she was 14. She'd refused to go back despite the punishment that followed. Sophia, Elena began, her heart racing. I don't think girls. Isabel's voice called from downstairs. Your father's awake. Come down now. Sophia gave one last twirl and skipped toward the stairs. Elena followed more slowly, her mind racing. The diary entries hadn't been enough. Words on a page couldn't stop what was happening, couldn't protect Sophia from what was coming. In the kitchen, Gabriel sat at the table watching Isabel finish preparing dinner, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His eyes lit up when Sophia entered. Look at my beautiful girl, he said, holding out his arm. Sophia went to him without hesitation, allowing him to pull her onto his lap despite her age. That dress is perfect on you. Elena stood in the doorway, watching as her mother smiled approvingly at the scene. Isabel had once been the young girl on Gabriel's lap, showered with gifts and attention. Now she orchestrated the same pattern for her daughters. So desperate for Gabriel's continued presence that she'd sacrifice anything, even her children. Elena, Gabriel called, noticing her in the doorway. Why the serious face? Come join your family. She moved forward mechanically, taking a seat at the table. Gabriel reached across to pat her hand, his fingers lingering on her wrist. I was just telling your mother about a little trip this weekend, he said. The cabin needs some work, and I thought Sophia might enjoy the fresh air. Maybe learn to fish. Isabel placed a dish on the table, her movements stiff. It sounds wonderful. Sophia will love that. Can Elena come too? Sophia asked innocently. Gabriel's smile tightened slightly. Not this time, sweetheart. Elena has her debate tournament, remember? Besides, I want some special time with my youngest. Elena felt her mother's warning gaze, saw the slight shake of her head. Don't make a scene. Don't ruin this. Actually, Elena said, her voice steadier than she felt, my tournament was canceled. Coach Williams got sick. The lie hung in the air. Gabriel's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Is that so? He asked, his tone dangerously soft. Isabel jumped in. But Elena has that big chemistry test on Monday. She needs to study all weekend. No, I don't, Elena persisted, meeting her father's gaze directly for the first time. I've finished that unit already. I'm free this weekend. The tension in the room thickened. Sophia, still perched on Gabriel's lap, looked confused by the sudden shift in atmosphere. Well, Gabriel finally said, his voice artificially light. The more the merrier, I suppose. Both my girls can come to the cabin. Isabel dropped a serving spoon, the clatter breaking the silence. I'll come too, she blurted. We can make it a family trip. I'll pack food for everyone. Gabriel's jaw tightened, but his smile remained fixed. Always trying to take care of everyone, aren't you, Isabel? He turned to Sophia. Go upstairs and change for dinner, princess. This dress is too nice for just eating at home. When Sophia had left, Gabriel's expression darkened. After dinner, Elena, I'd like to see you in my study. We need to discuss this sudden change in your schedule. Elena nodded, her heart pounding but her resolve strengthening. She had made her choice. She would not let Sophia go to that cabin alone, whatever the consequences for herself might be. Later that night, after the painful conversation in the study left fresh bruises on her wrists where no one would see them, Elena returned to her room and took out her diary once more. Made a decision today. Cannot let S become me. We'll find a way out before the cabin trip. Whatever it takes. This has to end. Isabel Morales had always believed that her greatest duty was to keep her family together. Born in a small town outside Mexico City, she had grown up watching her own mother endure her father's moods and absences, always welcoming him back with forgiveness and devotion. Men are like this, her mother had told her. But a family needs a father. You make sacrifices for family. The morning after Elena's confrontation in the study, Isabel found her eldest daughter in the bathroom applying concealer to the finger-shaped bruises on her wrists. "Let me help you," Isabel said, taking the makeup from Elena's trembling hands. With practiced movements, she blended the concealer until the marks were barely visible. "You shouldn't have challenged him, Elena. You know better." Elena stared at their reflection in the mirror, mother and daughter, with the same dark eyes and similar features, separated by decades of different choices. "Why do you let this happen?" Elena asked quietly. "Why do you help him do this to us?" Isabel's hand paused briefly before continuing its work. "You don't understand what it means to keep a family together. The compromises required. These aren't compromises, Mom. This is abuse." Isabel flinched as if Elena had struck her. "Never use that word in this house," she hissed. "Your father loves us. Everything he does is out of love." "I know. You've said it 1,000 times. Elena pulled her arm away. "But it's not love, Mom. It's control. It's possession. It's sick." For a moment something flickered in Isabel's eyes, a flash of clarity, perhaps, or recognition, but it disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, replaced by the familiar defensive hardness. "You think life is so simple, don't you?" Isabel said. "You think you can just walk away and everything will be better? Who would pay for this house? Your school? Sophia's medication?" She shook her head. "You'll understand when you're older. Sometimes we accept difficult things for the greater good." "The greater good?" Elena repeated incredulously. "He's hurting Sophia now, just like he hurt me, just like he's probably hurt you, and you're helping him do it." Isabel slapped her. Not hard, but enough to shock them both into silence. Then, as if realizing what she'd done, Isabel reached for her daughter. "Elena, I'm sorry, I didn't mean, don't touch me." Elena stepped back. "You know what's happening at that cabin this weekend?" "You know, and you're still letting it happen." "I'm coming too," Isabel insisted. "I told you, we'll all go together." "And what? You'll sit downstairs while he takes Sophia fishing? Alone? Just like you used to send me for special time with Dad?" Elena's voice cracked. "Do you even remember what it was like to be the daughter instead of the accomplice?" Isabel's face crumpled, years of carefully maintained denial threatening to collapse. "What do you want me to do? Leave him? Where would we go? How would we live?" "Anywhere would be better than here," Elena said. "There are places that help women and children escape abusive homes. Lower your voice." Isabel glanced anxiously at the door. "If your father hears..." "That's exactly my point, Mom. We're always afraid of what he'll do, what he'll say. That's not a family. That's a prison." Isabel sank down onto the closed toilet lid, suddenly looking every one of her 42 years. "It wasn't always like this," she said softly. "When I met him, he was charming, attentive. He made me feel special. The problems didn't start until after you were born. So it's my fault?" Elena asked bitterly. "No." Isabel looked genuinely horrified. "No, never. I just meant ... things changed. He changed. Or maybe he was always this way and I couldn't see it." She pressed her hands to her face. "I don't know anymore, Elena. I don't know what's real and what I've invented to survive." It was the most honest thing Isabel had ever said to her daughter. In that moment, Elena saw her mother not as the enabler she'd grown to resent, but as another victim who had found a way to survive by becoming complicit. "Mom," Elena said gently, "we can get out. All 3 of us. But we have to do it before the cabin trip. Tomorrow when Dad goes to meet his friend Carlos for lunch. We pack what we need and we go." Isabel looked up, her expression cycling through fear, doubt, and something that might have been hope. "Where would we go?" "My English teacher, Mrs. Reyes. She suspected something was wrong months ago. She gave me information about a women's shelter in Allentown. They take minors with their mothers. Your father would find us," Isabel whispered. "He always says he would hunt us down if we ever tried to leave. Not if we get a restraining order. Not if we tell the truth about what he's done." Isabel's eyes widened in panic. No one can know about what happens in this house. The shame, Elena. Everyone would judge me for allowing it. They might, Elena acknowledged, but Sophia would be safe. I would be safe. You would be safe. Isn't that worth more than what people think? Isabel looked down at her hands, at the wedding ring she'd worn for 17 years. I've been teaching you girls the wrong lessons, she said quietly. I taught you to accept what should never be accepted, to call control love, to mistake fear for respect. A tear slid down her cheek. My mother taught me the same lessons. I thought I was doing what a good mother should. You can teach us something different now, Elena said, daring to hope for the first time in years. You can show us how to be brave. Isabel was silent for a long moment. From downstairs they heard Gabriel calling for breakfast. The familiar sound made them both tense instinctively. Tomorrow, Isabel finally said, her voice barely audible. When he goes to meet Carlos, we'll need to be quick. He never spends more than an hour with Carlos. Elena nodded, relief flooding through her. I'll talk to Sophia tonight. Tell her just enough so she's ready. No, Isabel shook her head. Let me talk to Sophia. It's time I started protecting my daughters properly. She stood, straightening her clothes and wiping her eyes. One more day of pretending, then never again. They descended the stairs together, returning to the performance that had become second nature. But something had shifted between mother and daughter, a new understanding, a shared purpose that gave Elena strength as she smiled at her father across the breakfast table. Sleep well, princess? Gabriel asked, watching her over his coffee cup. Yes, Dad, Elena replied, meeting his gaze steadily. I had dreams about the future. The plan seemed simple enough. When Gabriel left for lunch with Carlos at 12:30 the next day, they would have approximately 1 hour to pack essentials and leave. Isabel would take Sophia in her car, while Elena would take a bus to meet them at the shelter in Allentown. Separating would make it harder for Gabriel to track them all at once. Elena spent the morning in a state of hyper-awareness, cataloging every movement her father made, every shift in his mood. Gabriel seemed unusually attentive, watching the 3 women in his household with careful eyes. Twice he changed his plans unexpectedly, first deciding to work in the yard rather than watch television, then announcing he would make lunch himself rather than letting Isabel prepare it as usual. You seem distracted today, Isabel, he remarked as they sat down to the sandwiches he'd made. Is something bothering you? Isabel, who had been whispering to Sophia in the pantry earlier, startled slightly. No, just thinking about all the laundry I need to finish before we go to the cabin tomorrow. Gabriel studied her face for a moment too long. Always the dedicated housewife, he said finally, his tone making the compliment sound like an accusation. And you, Elena? You're quiet today. Elena forced a smile. Just tired, Dad. I stayed up late reading. Reading what? The question was casual, but Elena felt her pulse quicken. Just a novel for English class. The Great Gatsby. Ah, The American Dream Gone Wrong. Gabriel nodded. Tragic story. Man builds his entire life around a woman who isn't worth the effort. He took a bite of his sandwich, eyes never leaving Elena's face. Sometimes I think Fitzgerald had it right about women. Beautiful creatures, but ultimately destructive to men who love them too much. The subtext wasn't lost on any of them. Isabel quickly changed the subject, asking Gabriel about his lunch plans with Carlos. Actually, Gabriel said, checking his watch, Carlos called while I was making lunch. He needs to reschedule. Something about his son's baseball game. He smiled at Isabel. Looks like you're stuck with me all day, Corita. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. She glanced at her mother, who had gone very still, the half-eaten sandwich forgotten in her hands. That's wonderful, Isabel managed. We can all spend the day together then. I thought so too, Gabriel agreed, his smile not reaching his eyes. In fact, I had an idea. Why wait until tomorrow for our cabin trip? We could pack up after lunch and head there today. Beat the weekend traffic. Sophia, who had been quietly eating, looked up with confusion. But I thought we weren't going until tomorrow. I haven't packed yet. It won't take long to pack, Gabriel assured her. Your mother can help you. And think how nice it will be to wake up at the cabin tomorrow with the whole day ahead of us for fishing. Elena felt panic rising in her chest. The plan was unraveling before they'd even begun. She tried to catch her mother's eye, desperate for some indication of what to do next, but Isabel seemed frozen in place. I haven't finished my debate preparation, Elena said, grasping for any excuse. I really need to use the internet tonight. Gabriel's expression hardened slightly. I thought your tournament was canceled. It was, but we still have to submit our arguments online, she lied. It's due tonight by midnight. You can use my hotspot, Gabriel countered smoothly. I always bring it to the cabin for work emergencies. Elena fell silent, out of options. Isabel suddenly stood up, gathering plates with trembling hands. Let me clear these dishes, Then we can start packing, she said, her voice unnaturally high. Girls, finish your lunch. In the kitchen, they could hear Isabel moving around, opening and closing cabinet doors with more noise than necessary. Gabriel watched the doorway, a slight frown on his face. Sophia, go help your mother, he said after a moment. She seems overwhelmed. When Sophia had left the dining room, Gabriel turned his full attention to Elena. Is there something I should know about Elena? He asked, his voice dangerously soft. What do you mean? Elena kept her face carefully blank. You seem nervous, your mother seems nervous. Even Sophia is acting strange today, he leaned forward. I've always prided myself on knowing what goes on in my house, even when I'm not here. It's almost like a sixth sense. Elena said nothing, her hands clenched tightly in her lap. I went looking for my fishing tackle in the basement this morning, Gabriel continued conversationally, and I found something interesting behind the water heater. A small suitcase, already packed. His eyes hardened. Care to explain that, Elena? Before she could answer, a loud crash came from the kitchen, followed by Sophia's cry of alarm. Gabriel was on his feet immediately, striding toward the sound with Elena close behind. In the kitchen, Isabel stood amid shards of broken plates, a carving knife clutched in her right hand. Sophia had backed against the refrigerator, eyes wide with shock. Isabel, Gabriel said calmly, as if addressing a skittish animal, put the knife down. We're not going to the cabin, Isabel said, her voice shaking but determined. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever again. Gabriel's expression darkened. You're making a scene in front of the children, Isabel. This isn't like you. No, it isn't, she agreed, the knife still raised. The real me has been buried for 17 years under the woman you created. The woman who looked away while you hurt her daughters. The woman who helped you hurt them. Sophia whimpered, confusion and fear written across her face. Mom? What's happening? Gabriel took a step forward.
Isabel.
You're having some kind of breakdown. Put the knife down and we'll talk about this privately. Don't come any closer, Isabel warned, raising the knife higher. Girls, go upstairs and get the emergency bags from under my bed. We're leaving. Gabriel's facade of concern vanished, replaced by cold fury. No one is going anywhere. Mom? Sophia looked frantically between her parents. Dad? I don't understand. Elena moved to her sister's side, putting a protective arm around her shoulders. It's okay, Sophia. We just need to leave this house for a while. Leave? Sophia's voice rose in panic. But where would we go? Why? Gabriel seized on Sophia's confusion. See what you're doing, Isabel. Terrifying our youngest with your paranoid delusions. Making her think she needs to run from her own father. He edged closer to Isabel. I've always known you were weak, but I never thought you'd turn the girls against me. I didn't have to turn them against you, Isabel spat. You did that yourself every time you touched them. Every time you made them afraid in their own home. Sophia went very still beside Elena. What does she mean? She whispered. Gabriel's face contorted with rage. Enough, he roared, lunging forward suddenly and knocking the knife from Isabel's hand. It clattered across the floor as he grabbed her by the throat, slamming her against the counter. Sophia screamed. Elena, operating on pure instinct, pushed her sister toward the doorway. Run, she shouted. Go to Mrs. Finch next door. Call 911. As Sophia fled, Gabriel released Isabel and turned toward Elena. You, he growled, advancing on her. You've poisoned everyone against me. After everything I've done for this family. Elena backed away, her eyes darting to where the knife had fallen beside the refrigerator. Gabriel followed her gaze and moved to block her path. Gabriel, please, Isabel gasped, struggling to her feet. Don't hurt her. Hurt me instead. Oh, I intend to deal with both of you, he assured her, never taking his eyes off Elena. Teaching my own daughters to fear me, to run from me, making me the villain in my own house. Outside, a car door slammed. Gabriel's head whipped toward the window, momentarily distracted. Elena seized the opportunity, diving for the knife and coming up with it held before her. Stay back, she warned, her voice steadier than she felt. Sophia's gone for help. It's over, Dad. Everything's over. Gabriel looked between his wife and daughter, calculation replacing rage in his eyes. You think anyone will believe you? He asked softly. The respected businessman against the hysterical wife and troubled teenager. I've built a life in this community. People know me. They know the mask you wear, Elena countered. But we're going to show them what's underneath. The distant wail of sirens punctuated her words. Gabriel's expression shifted, the predatory confidence giving way to something like fear for the first time. This isn't over, he said, backing toward the door. This will never be over. You're my family, mine. Not anymore, Isabel said, moving to stand beside Elena. We never were. As the sirens grew louder, Gabriel made his choice. With one last venomous look at his wife and daughter, he turned and fled through the back door, disappearing into the wooded area behind the house, moments before red and blue lights illuminated the street out front. Alina lowered the knife, her legs suddenly unable to support her. Isabel caught her before she could fall, the two of them sinking to the kitchen floor together amid the broken dishes and shattered illusions of family. "He'll come back," Elena whispered, terror and relief warring within her. Isabel held her daughter tightly as if trying to protect her years too late. "Yes," she acknowledged, "but we'll be ready. And we won't be alone anymore." Through the window they could see police officers approaching the house, Sophia leading them with Mrs. S. Finch at her side. The long-kept secrets of the house on Sycamore Street were about to be exposed to the light, bringing both the pain of revelation and the possibility of healing. "We're going to be okay," Isabel promised, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. "Somehow, we're going to be okay." Elena nodded against her mother's shoulder, allowing herself to believe, if only for this moment, that the worst lessons of her childhood might finally be unlearned. The Philadelphia Police Department classified Gabriel Morales as a fugitive within hours of his escape from the house on Sycamore Street. Detective Ramona Torres, a 20-year veteran of the Special Victims Unit, sat across from Elena and Isabel in the sterile interview room at the station, her expression compassionate but professional as she reviewed her notes. "So he's been gone for periods of 3 to 6 months throughout your marriage," she confirmed, looking at Isabel. "But always returned." Isabel nodded, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of cooling coffee. The initial shock had worn off, leaving her looking older and profoundly tired. "He worked as a long-haul trucker. At least that's what he told us. I'm not sure anymore what was true and what wasn't." Detective Torres made a note. "We're checking with trucking companies now, but so far none have employment records for a Gabriel Morales matching his description or social security number." She paused. "Mrs. Morales, did your husband have access to other identification, perhaps under different names?" Isabel looked startled by the question. I don't know. He had a lockbox in his study that I wasn't allowed to open, and a safe deposit box at First National. We'll get warrants for those," Torres assured her. "What about friends, family members who might help him?" "He mentioned brothers in Arizona sometimes," Isabel said hesitantly, "and his friend Carlos here in Philadelphia. But I'd never met any of them." Gabriel kept his work life separate from home. Elena, who had been silent throughout most of the interview, spoke up. "I don't think Carlos exists," she said. "Dad always met him for lunch when he first got back to town, but he never brought him to the house. And whenever Mom suggested inviting him for dinner, Dad always had an excuse." Detective Torres nodded thoughtfully. "It's possible these lunch meetings were something else entirely. Perhaps meeting with a contact or establishing an alibi." She turned a page in her notebook. "I want to ask about the cabin now. Elena mentioned it was in the Pocono Mountains." Isabel paled visibly. "Yes, near Lake Wallenpopak. Gabriel bought it about 7 years ago. He said it was for hunting trips with friends. Did you ever go there, Mrs. Morales?" "Once, when he first bought it. Not since then." "But your daughters went?" Isabel looked down at her hands. "Elena went once about 2 years ago. She refused to go back." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I should have asked why. I should have known." Elena reached over and took her mother's hand. "You didn't want to know, Mom. None of us wanted to know the truth." Detective Torres watched the interaction carefully. "Elena, can you tell me about the cabin? Any details you remember might help us locate it." Elena closed her eyes briefly, as if steeling herself. It was small. Just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room with a fireplace. It had a red door and green shutters. There was a dirt road leading to it, and you had to drive through a gate with a keypad. The code was 1983. She paused. "Dad's birth year. Did you know the address?" Elena shook her head. "We just followed GPS coordinates. Dad never showed us any paperwork for it." "That's still helpful," Torres assured her. "We'll check property records under his name and known aliases once we have them." She hesitated, before asking her next question. "Elena, Sophia mentioned that your father was planning to take her to this cabin tomorrow. For fishing." Elena's grip tightened on her mother's hand. "He wasn't planning to teach her to fish." The detective nodded, understanding the implication. "We'll need detailed statements from both you and Sophia about the inappropriate behavior. A female officer will conduct those interviews, and a victim's advocate will be present." Isabel began to cry silently, tears streaming down her face. "My baby," she whispered. "I almost let him take my baby to that place." "Mrs. Morales," Detective Torres said gently, "I know this is painful, but it's important that we understand the full picture. Was your husband ever violent toward you or your daughters?" Isabel wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "He had a temper. If things weren't exactly as he wanted, he would get angry, throw things, break things." She swallowed hard. He hit me sometimes when the girls weren't around. Not often enough to leave visible marks, but enough to make sure I knew who was in control. And the girls? Never, Sophia. He never raised a hand to her. But Elena... Isabel looked at her daughter, guilt written across her face. It was rougher with Elena, especially after she started to question him, to pull away from his affection. Elena rolled up her sleeve, revealing the fading bruises on her wrist. These are from 2 days ago, when I insisted on going to the cabin too. There are others, but they've mostly healed. Detective Torres photographed the bruises, her expression grim. We'll document all of this for the restraining order and eventual prosecution. She closed her notebook. For now, we need to discuss your safety. Do you have family you can stay with? Isabel shook her head. My parents are in Mexico. I haven't spoken to them in years. Gabriel didn't allow it. What about friends? We moved a lot, Isabel explained. Every few years, a new town, a new state. Gabriel said it was for his work, but now I wonder. We've only been in Philadelphia for 18 months. Elena spoke up again. My English teacher, Mrs. Reyes. She gave me information about a women's shelter in Allentown. That's where we were planning to go today, Detective Torres nodded. That's a good option. They have security protocols and experience with cases like yours. We'll arrange transportation once we've finished the initial statements. As they continued discussing logistics, a soft knock came at the door. Another officer entered and handed Torres a note. She read it quickly, her expression changing. We've located the cabin, she told them. A property near Lake Wallenpaupack purchased 7 years ago by a Gabriel Morano, similar to Morales but not exact. Officers are on their way there now. Will they find him? Isabel asked, fear creeping back into her voice. That's what we're hoping, Torres replied. But even if he's not there, we may find evidence that will help us track him. Financial records, identification documents, computer files. Elena shuddered visibly. There might be other evidence there, too, of what he did. Detective Torres reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. Elena, I want you to know how brave you've been, both in protecting your sister and in coming forward now. Many adults wouldn't have had your courage. I don't feel brave, Elena admitted. I feel scared all the time. I've always felt scared. That's what makes it brave, Torres told her. Doing what needs to be done despite the fear. Isabel put her arm around her daughter's shoulders. I should have been the brave one, she said softly. I should have protected you both from the beginning. You're protecting us now, Mom, Elena reminded her. You chose us over him today. That's what matters. As Detective Torres excused herself to check on Sophia's interview progress, mother and daughter sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared trauma and uncertain future hanging between them. Do you think they'll find him? Elena finally asked. Isabel considered the question carefully. Eventually, she said, men like your father believe they're untouchable, invincible. That makes them careless. What if he comes back for us before they catch him? Isabel's expression hardened with newfound resolve. Then he'll find that we're not the same people he left behind. We're not afraid anymore. She squeezed Elena's hand. Or rather, we won't let fear control us anymore. Elena wasn't sure she believed that yet, but she nodded anyway. One step at a time, one day at a time. That was all they could manage for now. That and the hope that the lessons of the house on Sycamore Street might someday be forgotten in favor of new, healthier truths learned in freedom. The women's shelter in Allentown was housed in a former convent, its red brick exterior and stained glass windows giving it the appearance of a small college rather than a refuge for survivors of domestic violence. Tall wrought iron gates surrounded the property, monitored by security cameras and an electronic entry system. Inside the gates, the courtyard garden was filled with late summer flowers, bright splashes of color that seemed incongruous against the backdrop of broken lives being rebuilt. Elena, Sophia, and Isabel arrived at dusk, escorted by a female police officer who waited until they were safely inside before departing. The shelter's director, a tall black woman in her 50s named Dr. Vivian Marshall, greeted them in the entry hall. Welcome to Sanctuary, she said, her voice warm but professional. I know it's been a difficult day for all of you. Let's get you settled, and then we can go over the house rules and procedures in the morning when you've rested. She led them through corridors lined with bulletin boards displaying community resources, support group schedules, and children's artwork. Their assigned room was on the second floor, a simple space with 2 sets of bunk beds, a small bathroom, and a window overlooking the garden. We're at capacity right now, Dr. Marshall explained apologetically, but we should have a family suite opening up next week. This is fine, Isabel assured her. We're grateful for any safe place. The dining room serves breakfast from 7 to 9, Dr. Marshall continued. There's a shared kitchen on each floor if you prefer to cook your own meals. Counseling sessions are available daily, both group and individual. She paused. I understand from Detective Torres that your situation involves unique family dynamics. We have specialists who work specifically with cases involving children. Isabel nodded, unable to meet the director's eyes. For now, try to get some rest, Dr. Marshall said gently. Your body needs time to process the stress you've been under. There are clean toiletries in the bathroom and extra clothing in the dresser donations, so they might not fit perfectly, but they're clean. After she left, the three Morales women stood in silence, taking in their new surroundings. Sophia was the first to speak. Is this our home now? She asked, her voice small. Just for a little while, Isabel told her, attempting a reassuring smile. Until we figure out what comes next. Sophia sat on the lower bunk of one bed, running her hand over the simple blue blanket. I still don't understand everything that's happening, she admitted. Why we had to leave so suddenly. Why Dad got so angry. She looked up at her mother and sister. What did he do that was so bad? Elena and Isabel exchanged glances, neither sure how to explain the complicated truth to a 13-year-old who had been sheltered from it by their collective silence. Sophia, Isabel began, sitting beside her daughter, your father. He didn't treat us the way a father and husband should. The way he treated me, and especially the way he treated Elena, wasn't right or normal. You mean the yelling? The way he broke things when he was mad? Isabel took a deep breath. That was part of it, but there were other things too. Ways he touched Elena that fathers shouldn't touch their daughters. Sophia's brow furrowed. Like how? Elena sat on Sophia's other side. Like the way he would sit me on his lap even when I was too old for that, or come into my room without knocking, or insist on being in the dressing room when I tried on clothes. Comprehension slowly dawned on Sophia's face. He does those things with me too, she said quietly. I thought it was normal. That he was just being affectionate. It's not normal, Elena told her firmly. And it's not your fault that you didn't know that. We all worked very hard to pretend everything was fine. Sophia was quiet for a moment, processing. The necklaces, she finally said, and the trips to the cabin. He was going to do bad things to me there, wasn't he, like he did to you? Elena nodded, tears filling her eyes. I'm so sorry, Sophia. I should have protected you sooner. Sophia suddenly threw her arms around Elena, burying her face in her sister's shoulder. You did protect me, she insisted. You stopped him from taking me to the cabin, and you made Mom see the truth. Isabel watched her daughter's embrace, her own tears falling freely now. I should have been the one protecting both of you, she said, her voice breaking. Instead, I taught you to accept his behavior, to normalize it. Elena reached out her hand, pulling her mother into their huddle. You were a victim too, Mom. He isolated you, controlled you, made you dependent on him. That doesn't excuse what I allowed to happen, Isabel whispered. No, Elena agreed softly, but it helps explain it. And understanding is the first step toward healing. That's what Mrs. Reyes told me. The three of them stayed that way for a long time, holding each other as the daylight faded and the room grew dim. It was Sophia who finally pulled away, wiping her eyes. I'm hungry, she announced, the practical concern of a teenager momentarily overriding the emotional turmoil. Isabel managed a watery laugh. Let's see if we can find that shared kitchen Dr. Marshall mentioned. They ventured into the hallway, following signs to the communal kitchen where several other women were preparing evening meals. An older woman with silver-streaked hair looked up from chopping vegetables and smiled at them. You must be the new arrivals, she said. I'm Margaret. Been here about 2 months now, she gestured around the kitchen. Feel free to use whatever you need. The labeled food in the refrigerator belongs to specific residents, but the pantry items are communal. Isabel thanked her and began examining the pantry shelves, falling naturally into the caretaking role she knew best. As she assembled ingredients for a simple meal, Elena watched her mother interact with Margaret and the other women, exchanging recipes and gentle small talk. There was an ease to Isabel now, a natural warmth that had been suppressed in Gabriel's presence. Later, as they ate together at a small table in the corner of the dining room, Elena observed Sophia too, how she glanced around curiously at the other families, how she seemed simultaneously younger and older than her 13 years. The facade they had all maintained for so long was crumbling, revealing the true people beneath. Mom, Sophia said between bites of pasta, what happens if they don't catch Dad? Will we have to stay hidden forever? Isabel set down her fork. No, sweetheart. We won't hide forever. We'll build a new life wherever it makes sense for us to go. She reached across the table, taking each daughter's hand in one of her own. But first, we need to heal. All of us. And that will take time. How do you heal from something like this? Elena asked quietly. I don't know exactly, Isabel admitted. But I think it starts with telling the truth to ourselves and to each other. No more secrets, no more pretending. Elena nodded, thinking of her diary hidden in Pride and Prejudice. The only place she had allowed herself to acknowledge reality. No more pretending, she agreed. That night, as Sophia slept in the bunk below her, Elena lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the shelter distant voices in the hallway. The hum of the air conditioning, the occasional siren in the distance. Different sounds from those of the house on Sycamore Street, but comforting in their anonymity. On the other side of the room she could tell from her breathing that Isabel was awake too. "Mom?" she whispered. "Yes, Elena. I've been thinking about what you said earlier about teaching us the wrong lessons." She paused. "I think you can teach us new ones now. What lessons would those be?" Isabel's voice was soft in the darkness. Elena considered the question. How to be strong without being cruel. How to love without possession. How to build a family based on respect instead of fear. There was a long silence, and then Isabel's whisper came back, thick with emotion. "I'm still learning those lessons myself, Hija. Maybe we can learn them together." "I'd like that," Elena replied. As sleep finally began to claim her, Elena realized that for the first time in years, she wasn't counting the days until something, her father's departure, her eventual escape from home, graduation and college far away. For tonight at least, she was simply present in this moment of newfound safety, allowing herself to believe that tomorrow might hold something better than yesterday had offered. Detective Ramona Torres stood in the cabin's small living room, latex gloves on her hands as she carefully examined the framed photographs on the mantel. They showed Gabriel Morales-Sor, Gabriel Morano as he was known here, fishing, hunting, and enjoying the outdoors, always alone or with people cropped just out of frame, a man without connections, or at least none he wanted documented. Detective, her partner Mike Dolan, called from the bedroom. "You need to see this." Torres found him standing before an open closet, where a false back panel had been removed to reveal a hidden storage space. Inside were stacks of documents, passports, driver's licenses, social security cards, all bearing Gabriel's photograph but different names. Gabriel Morales. It's Gabriel Morano. Gabriel Martinez. It's Gabriel Mendez. "Jesus," Torres muttered, picking up one of the passports. "Who is this guy?" "Someone who doesn't want to be found," Dolan replied, continuing to catalog the documents. "There's more. Bank statements, property deeds in different states. And this." He held up a small notebook. "Looks like addresses. Women's names next to them." Torres took the notebook, flipping through pages of meticulous handwriting. Names, addresses, notes about children ages, genders, physical descriptions. Some entries were crossed out with dates noted beside them. This isn't just about the Morales family, she realized. This is a pattern. These could be other families, other victims. Going back years, Dolan added grimly. Decades, maybe. Torres turned to the forensic technician photographing the bedroom. "I want every inch of this place documented. Every fiber, fingerprint, and hair collected. And bring in the cadaver dogs to check the property." "You think he killed someone?" Dolan asked. Torres gestured to the notebook. "Some of these crossed-out names have terminated written beside them. I don't think he's talking about ending a lease." Outside, more officers were combing the 5-acre property surrounding the cabin. The remote location, accessed only by a single dirt road, offered perfect privacy for whatever activities Gabriel had conducted here. The nearest neighbor was over a mile away. Torres stepped onto the porch, pulling out her phone to update her lieutenant, and the case had just expanded significantly beyond domestic violence and sexual abuse of a minor. If their suspicions were correct, Gabriel Morales, or whatever his real name might be, was a serial predator who targeted vulnerable women and their children, creating temporary families before moving on, or worse. "Lieutenant Chun," Torres reported when her call was answered. "We've got a situation here at the cabin. I think we need to call in the FBI. This has all the hallmarks of a cross-jurisdictional serial case." She paused, listening. "Yes, sir. Multiple identities, possible victims in several states. We've found documentation suggesting he's been operating for at least 15 years, possibly longer." As she spoke, one of the officers approached from the woods behind the cabin, his expression grave. "Hold on, Lieutenant," Torres said, covering the phone. "What is it, Peterson?" "We found something by the lake," the officer reported, "but 100 yards from the cabin. Looks like a burial site. Recently disturbed." Torres closed her eyes briefly. "How recently?" "Within the last week, according to the cadaver dog handler." Lieutenant Torres returned to the phone. "We need the forensic anthropology team out here ASAP, and put out a multi-state bolo for Gabriel Morales, all known aliases. Consider him armed and extremely dangerous." After ending the call, Torres stared out at the serene lake, its surface reflecting the afternoon sun. How many secrets lay beneath that placid exterior? How many victims had Gabriel brought to this isolated retreat over the years? "He'll run," Dolan said, joining her on the porch. "Guy like this, With this many identities, he's got escape plans. Yes, Torres agreed. But he'll also want what he considers his possessions, his family. You think he'll go back for the Morales women? Torres nodded slowly. Men like him don't give up what they view as theirs, especially not when challenged. It's not just about the women themselves. It's about control, about winning. She turned to her partner. We need to increase security at the shelter. And get me everything you can on his known associates. This Carlos he supposedly met for lunch. The brothers in Arizona. They might be real, they might be fabricated, but we need to check every angle. Back in the cabin, the evidence collection continued. In the second bedroom, the one Elena had mentioned being taken to during her visit, technicians were removing the mattress, checking for DNA evidence. The bathroom yielded hairs from multiple individuals, carefully collected and bagged. It's phoned in a drawer, documented purchases of cleaning supplies, duct tape, plastic sheeting. Torres stood in the center of it all, trying to build a mental profile of the man they were hunting. Organized, meticulous, patient, enough to create and maintain multiple identities, to integrate himself into communities temporarily before moving on. Someone who understood how to select vulnerable targets. Isabel, an immigrant with no local support system, had been ideal. He isolated her further by moving regularly, preventing her from building relationships that might have offered perspective or help. The most concerning aspect was his focus on the daughters. Elena had escaped the worst fate he'd planned for her by refusing to return to the cabin. But Sophia had nearly not been so fortunate, and the notebook suggested there had been other daughters, other families, other victims who didn't escape. Torres's phone rang again, the station calling with an update. We've got a hit on one of his aliases, the desk sergeant reported. Gabriel Martinez used a credit card at a gas station in Scranton about an hour ago. Security footage confirms it's our guy. Scranton, Torres repeated. That's heading back toward Philadelphia, toward the Morales family. I'll alert Pennsylvania State Police, the sergeant said. Do we have a vehicle description? Torres thought quickly. The Morales family reported he drove a dark blue Ford F-150, but he likely has access to other vehicles. Check the property records we found at the cabin. There might be another car registered under one of his aliases. After ending the call, Torres returned to the cabin for one last look before heading back to Philadelphia. In the master bedroom, something caught her eye, a small wooden box on the nightstand that the techs hadn't opened yet. Inside was a collection of jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, earrings, each in its own velvet pouch. Trophies, Torres murmured, recognizing the significance immediately. She picked up one pouch and emptied it into her gloved palm. A delicate gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant fell out exactly like the one Sophia had been wearing when they interviewed her at the station. Torres carefully repacked the jewelry and handed the box to the evidence technician. Priority on this, she instructed. I want DNA testing on each item, and check missing persons reports for any women or girls described as wearing similar pieces. As the investigation expanded around her, Torres couldn't shake the feeling that they were racing against time. Gabriel Morales had escaped justice for years by staying one step ahead of discovery. Now that his carefully constructed world was crumbling, he would either run far away to rebuild elsewhere, or return to reclaim what he believed was rightfully his. And based on everything she'd learned about him so far, Torres was betting on the latter. 3 days after their arrival at the shelter, Isabel was awakened by a soft knock at their door. She glanced at the digital clock on the nightstand, 2:17 a.m. Beside her, Sophia slept soundly in the lower bunk, while Elena's steady breathing came from the bed across the room. The knock came again, more insistent. Isabel slipped out of bed and padded to the door in her borrowed pajamas. Mrs. Morales? Doctor. Marshall's voice came through the door. I need to speak with you. It's important. Isabel opened the door to find the director standing in the hallway, a security guard beside her. Dr. Marshall's expression was grave. What's wrong? Isabel asked, instantly alert. Can you step into the hallway? I don't want to wake the girls yet. Isabel followed her into the corridor, pulling the door nearly closed behind her. The security guard moved a few paces away, giving them privacy while maintaining a watchful presence. The police called, Dr. Marshall explained in a low voice. They believe your husband may be in the area. He was spotted at a gas station in Allentown about an hour ago. Isabel felt her knees weaken. He's coming for us, she whispered. We don't know that for certain, Dr. Marshall said, though her expression suggested otherwise. But we're implementing our highest security protocol. No one enters or leaves the building without identification and verification. We've alerted all staff, and additional security personnel are on their way. Should we go somewhere else? A hotel, maybe? Detective Torres specifically advised against that. You're safer here with our security measures than you would be moving around in public where he could spot you. Dr. Marshall placed a steadying hand on Isabel's arm. I know this is frightening, but you're not alone anymore, Mrs. Morales. We have procedures for situations like this. Isabel nodded, trying to absorb the information through her fear. Should I tell the girls? I think Elena should know, but perhaps we can let Sophia sleep for now. No sense in frightening her until we have more information. Yes, that makes sense. Isabel hesitated. Can I use a phone? I'd like to call Detective Torres myself. Of course. You can use the office phone downstairs. The security guard will escort you. When Isabel returned to the room, she found Elena sitting up in bed, alert and watchful. What's going on? She asked immediately. I heard voices. Isabel sat beside her daughter, speaking in hushed tones to avoid waking Sophia. Your father has been seen in Allentown. The police think he might be looking for us. Elena's face paled, but she remained calm. What did Detective Torres say? That they're closing in on him. They found things at the cabin. Evidence that he's done this before to other families. Isabel wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm night. She said he's dangerous, more dangerous than we realized. I knew that already, Elena said quietly. I always felt it, even when I couldn't name it. Isabel looked at her eldest daughter with new respect. Elena had always seen the truth about Gabriel more clearly than she had herself. Detective Torres is sending officers to patrol around the shelter, Isabel continued. And the shelter has its own security. We're safe here, Elena nodded, though the tension in her shoulders told a different story. We should take turns staying awake tonight, she suggested, just in case. In case of what, Elena? He can't get in here. Elena's eyes were dark and knowing beyond her 16 years. Dad always finds a way to get what he wants. You know that as well as I do. Isabel couldn't argue with the assessment. Throughout their marriage, Gabriel had demonstrated an uncanny ability to overcome obstacles, to manipulate situations to his advantage. If he had located them at the shelter, he would be calculating, watching, looking for weaknesses in the security. I'll take the first watch, Isabel decided. You try to sleep a little longer. Elena shook her head. I'm too alert now. You sleep, Mom. I'll wake you in a few hours. Reluctantly, Isabel agreed, returning to her bunk. But sleep remained elusive as her mind raced through memories and regrets, imagining Gabriel's rage as his carefully constructed life unraveled. The man she had married or thought she had married was apparently a fiction, a role he had played in a larger, darker drama. How many other women had fallen for the same performance? How many other children had suffered because of it? Across the room, Elena sat cross-legged on her bed, back against the wall, eyes fixed on the door. In the faint light filtering through the curtains, Isabel could see her daughter's profile, the determined set of her jaw, the vigilant posture. Elena had been standing guard her entire life, she realized, watching for danger, anticipating threats, protecting her sister from the fate she herself had endured. Elena, Isabel whispered. I'm so sorry. Elena turned slightly. For what? For not seeing, for not protecting you, for teaching you that what was happening was normal, or worse, that you deserved it somehow. Elena was quiet for a long moment. You were taught the same lessons, weren't you? By your own mother? Isabel closed her eyes briefly. Yes, my father wasn't kind to any of us, but my mother always said family comes first, that a woman's duty is to keep her family together no matter the cost. So you were doing what you thought was right, Elena observed. What you were taught was right. That doesn't excuse it, Isabel insisted. I was the adult. I should have questioned what I'd been taught, especially when I saw my children suffering. Maybe, Elena agreed softly, but you're questioning it now. You're learning different lessons, like you said. She paused. That's all any of us can do, right? Learn and try to do better? Isabel felt tears welling in her eyes at her daughter's capacity for understanding. Generosity she hadn't earned and wasn't sure she deserved. When did you get so wise? She asked. I read a lot, Elena replied with a slight smile. Books were a good escape when things were bad. They fell silent again, the only sound Sophia's soft breathing from the lower bunk. Outside their window, the distant wail of a police siren reminded them of the danger that still lurked beyond the shelter's walls. Do you think he'll try to contact us? Elena asked eventually. Detective Torres thinks he might, Isabel admitted. She said men like him often can't help themselves. They need to explain, to justify, to try one last manipulation. If he does, Elena said firmly, we don't listen. Not to anything he says. Isabel nodded her agreement, though a small, shameful part of her, the part still conditioned to seek Gabriel's approval, to believe his promises, whispered that maybe he could explain everything, that maybe there had been some misunderstanding. She pushed the thought away forcefully. There was no misunderstanding. The evidence in the cabin, the multiple identities, the notebook full of names all confirmed the predator that had been hiding behind the mask of husband and father. As dawn approached, Sophia stirred in her bunk, sitting up with the disoriented look of someone waking in an unfamiliar place. "Mom? Elena? Why are you both awake?" "Just couldn't sleep, sweetheart," Isabel told her, exchanging a look with Elena. They had agreed not to tell Sophia about Gabriel's possible proximity unless necessary. "How about some breakfast? The dining room should be opening soon." Sophia nodded, rubbing her eyes. "I had weird dreams," she said. "About Dad. He was calling my name from outside, but I couldn't see him." Isabel and Elena exchanged another look, this one more alarmed. "It was just a dream," Elena assured her sister, though her own expression was troubled. "Dreams are just our brains processing stuff that happened during the day." Sophia accepted this explanation without question, getting up to choose clothes from the donated items they'd been given. As she disappeared into the bathroom, Isabel moved to sit beside Elena. "Do you think—" she began. "It was probably just a coincidence," Elena interrupted, though she didn't sound convinced. "But maybe we should tell Dr. Marshall about it." Isabel agreed. When Sophia emerged from the bathroom, they made their way downstairs to the dining room, where several other families were already eating breakfast. Dr. Marshall was speaking with a resident near the coffee station, and gestured for Isabel to join her when she noticed them enter. "Any news?" Isabel asked quietly after instructing the girls to get their breakfast. "Nothing concrete," Dr. Marshall replied. "But one of our night staff thought she saw someone watching the building from across the street around midnight. When security went to check, no one was there." Isabel felt her heart rate accelerate. Sophia had a dream about her father calling to her from outside. Dr. Marshall's expression turned more serious. "Children often have an intuitive sense of danger," she said. "I'll inform Detective Torres. In the meantime, I think it would be best if your family remained inside the building today. We have activities planned in the community room, and the counselors are available for sessions." Isabel nodded, glancing over to where her daughters were selecting food from the breakfast buffet. Sophia was chatting with another young girl, her expression animated and carefree. Elena, as usual, was more reserved, her eyes constantly scanning the room, assessing. "They're so different," Isabel observed. Elena always watching, always wary. Sophia still trusting, still open. "Different children respond differently to trauma," Dr. Marshall said. "Elena took on a protective role early, it seems. That often happens with older siblings in situations like yours. They become hypervigilant, always on alert for threats." "And Sophia? From what you've described, she was more sheltered from the worst of your husband's behavior. Her father treated her differently, grooming her, but not yet subjecting her to the same abuse Elena experienced." Dr. Marshall's voice was matter-of-fact but compassionate. A quote, "That's why it's so important that you got her out when you did." The pattern was escalating. Isabel shuddered at the blunt assessment, but she couldn't deny its accuracy. Gabriel had been preparing Sophia, just as he had prepared Elena years earlier. The special attention, the gifts, the private time together. History had been about to repeat itself when Elena had intervened. "Will they be okay?" Isabel asked, the question that had haunted her since their escape. "After everything that's happened?" Dr. Marshall considered the question with appropriate seriousness. "With the right support, yes, I believe they will. Children are remarkably resilient, especially when they have at least one protective caregiver they can trust." She looked directly at Isabel. "That's you now. You've taken the hardest step, already breaking the cycle, choosing your daughters over their abuser." Isabel wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered. "I waited too long. I let it happen for years. But you didn't let it continue," Dr. Marshall reminded her. "When the moment came, you found your courage. That's what your daughters will remember in the long run, not that you were perfect, but that you fought for them when it mattered most." As they rejoined Elena and Sophia at the breakfast table, Isabel noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the dining room. The shelter staff were moving with greater purpose, communicating in hushed tones, occasionally glancing toward the windows. One of the security guards stationed herself near the main entrance, hand resting casually near the radio at her belt. Elena noticed it too. "Something's happening," she murmured to her mother. Before Isabel could respond, Detective Torres appeared in the doorway, scanning the room until she located their family. She approached their table with measured steps, her expression carefully neutral. "Good morning," she greeted them, pulling up a chair. "How are you all doing today?" "You didn't come here at 7 a.m. to check on our well-being," Elena observed shrewdly. "What's wrong?" Torres glanced at Sophia, who was watching the exchange with growing concern, then back to Elena and Isabel. "We have reason to believe your father may have located the shelter," she said, keeping her voice low. "A man matching his description was seen in a car across the street earlier this morning. When officers approached, he drove away. The community room of the shelter had been transformed into a temporary command center. A dozen officers from the Allentown Police Department, coordinated with state troopers and FBI agents, creating a perimeter around the building while shelter staff ensured all residents remained safely inside. Electronic maps displayed the surrounding streets, with red markers indicating possible sightings of Gabriel or vehicles registered under his known aliases.